Hello, we're here to discuss Danny's uh, informal assessment that I conducted to identify areas that he may need to work in when coming to my classroom for reading, math, and writing. Danny was identified in need of these services for his fifth grade year due to a formal evaluation that was done by the psychological examiner due to Danny's performance and lack of growth in the regular classroom during his fourth grade year. His teacher noticed that he was missing some of the components as far as being able to meet the standards and just lack some knowledge in certain skill levels to be able to perform well on assessments. And so she recommended that he have an evaluation, and it showed that he needed services in reading, math, and writing. So the first thing we did was we had a passage for Danny to read and with 5 questions to answer pertaining to details in that passage. And when he could look back at the answer and get the answer, he was able to find the answer, but he only wrote down a portion of the answer. So he was either getting distracted or thought he had it written down when he really did not. When he had to come up with his own answer from information out of the passage, he wrote down an answer, but it was not exactly what it would have been if he had looked back in the passage. So we need to focus on instructing Danny to look back in the passage to find the correct answer. Because while sometimes reading comprehension questions have you analyze what your thoughts are about the passage, not always do they want you to do that. So he needs to understand when it's okay to look back and when it's not. In writing, I had Danny write the answer to a writing prompt. He was able to give me a main idea, and what he wrote would have been a really good introductory paragraph. If he had taken his time and continued on, he could have wrote more than one paragraph. But and so when I have Danny in class, that's one thing that I will have to encourage him to do is to take his time. And I will also need to break down assignments into small segments so that Danny will not feel rushed to get through with them. In math, he was able to subtract and add single digit basic facts, which is good, and he did those also in multiplication. When it came to regrouping, he could do the first column where he had to borrow from the tens place. But then if he had to regroup into the hundreds place, he didn't know how to do that. So that is something else that we'll be working on. Also, in long division, he did very well. That tells me that he knows his basic multiplication facts and could complete those problems. Now, multiplication, he was able to do the basic facts. I had 20 multiplication facts on there, and he got them all. Then we went to double digits. He did manage to get those, but when it got to where you had double digits on the bottom as the bottom number and even triple digits. And you should have had 2 or 3 rows there, and all those rows of numbers, the columns should have been added up. He was not able to do that, and even there were some problems that he did not complete. I don't know if he didn't know how to do them and he just quit, or he ran out of time because the session was over, or exactly what. This was not a time test, so he should have had plenty of time to complete those. Also, when it came to fractions, he was able to recognize and identify parts of a fraction or parts of a whole, but then when it came to adding and subtracting fractions, both with like denominators and unlike denominators, he was not able to do that. So that is definitely a 5th grade skill that we'll be working on, and it's still fairly young, early in the year. So that is not like that's a 2nd or 3rd grade level skill. He's pretty on target with that. And then also rounding. He was able to round decimals in the 10 spot, or whatever number was right behind the decimal. But if he had to move further away from the decimal, he was not able to do it. So he rounded all the decimal places the same way. So that is something that needs to be clarified with him, and we need just a little bit more work. I think he can pick up on that fairly quick if we continue to work on it. Then also changing those fractions to decimals and then decimals to percents. He did all of the problems the same way, and the ones that were supposed to be done in that specific way, the way that he thought they should be done, were correct. But if there was any variation, he missed the problem. So he just needs to understand those rules as far as how to convert from fractions to percents and then percents to decimals. So we just need to go over a few rules and have a few problems to practice. The next section was where he had to, I gave him some simple algebraic problems. It was basically knowing your multiplication facts and filling in the blank of what to, not multiplication facts, but addition facts. It was basically filling in those addition facts with the unknown, and it totally threw him off to see an X in the problem. But once I explained to him what to do, he picked right up on it. So it's probably something that maybe has not been covered yet in 5th grade, but he should be familiar with it in the way of learning about the associative property in addition. So I think he will pick up on that, as long as it's a very simple problem with adding and subtracting in those algebraic equations. Lastly, I gave Danny a graph to identify and answer questions about, and he was able to do that. He actually slowed down and recalculated to make sure that he got the questions correct, and he had to add some of the totals on the graph together, and was able to do that looking at different groupings on the graph. Some of the things that not only the formal but this informal assessment has identified that Danny is good at include being able to answer comprehension questions. We always need work in reading comprehension, and so that's definitely one area we'll be working on, learning how to pick those details out, as well as the main idea of each paragraph. Also, coming up with his own answers were partially correct when he did the reading comprehension assessment, so we need to learn when it's okay to look back in the passage to get the answers, and then when it's appropriate to develop your own answer. He did answer the questions pertaining to verb tense, and so that is one thing that he is good at, is choosing the correct verb in a sentence, and then also punctuation, with the end punctuation. He is good at that. In math, single digit addition and subtraction and multiplication were great. As the problems get more complicated, he loses his concentration, so it's more difficult to continue those problems. But these are just a few of the things that we'll be looking for. Forward to working with Danny on. Thank you.